Currently, it is 76 degrees here on the campus of St. Louis Community College at Florissant Valley. I'm Jell with your noon news update. A teenage boy is charged with murdering a St. Louis man last year. Police say 16-year-old Anthony Thompson shot and killed Michael Hunt in June 2017 at a family gathering in the 4700 block of Beacon Avenue. Investigators believe the shooting happened after the victim told the teen he was too young to carry a gun. Thompson is being held without bail. Authorities are looking for an elderly man who went missing in Ferguson. Police say Edmund McDavid Sr. disappeared yesterday after he went to the bathroom at a Schnucks grocery store on Florissant Road. The 86-year-old has Alzheimer's disease. And Schnucks will be selling a new salsa inspired by Cardinals slugger Matt Carpenter. The grocery chain announced yesterday that customers can begin buying Bueno Mojo salsa at St. Louis stores on Thursday. Carpenter has been making his own salsa from his home garden this season and has become popular with his teammates. Some believe his salsa has played a factor in the team's success during the second half of the season. In campus news, let's see. Today there's an SGA meeting at 1 p.m. and some 9/11 remembrance, though we don't really have a time on that. Tomorrow, SGA primary elections are 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Student Center hallway. It's also SGA MCCA Day in Jefferson City. Same with Thursday, where we've got the SGA primary elections from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the Student Center hallway. Apparently, next Monday is Constitution Day. I don't know what's going on there, but there's some kind of event from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. in the Student Center hallway. And Focus on Success is next Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Student Center Multipurpose Room. There's also SGA officer elections and an SGA meeting at 1 p.m. Now, on to the weather. Today, it is partly cloudy, a high of 81, low of 60. Tomorrow, it will be sunny, a high of late 81, low of 61. Thursday, sunny, high of 85, low of 63. Friday, sunny, high of 88, low of 64. And Saturday, sunny, high of 86, low of 64. Currently, it is 76 degrees here at KCFV. I'm Jell, and this has been your noon news update. But please stay tuned, because we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will be back with GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. We like to kick the show off with the new game releases for this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are currently coming to theaters, before going on to all sorts of video game news and information, which we have a decent bit of, thanks to the fact that Tokyo Game Show is now. So, well, almost, actually. No, Tokyo Game Show is on the 19th, 20th. Okay, so people are just prepping for Tokyo Game Show. I don't know what's going on then. There's a lot of interesting announcements, so do please stay tuned. But until then, here is Waiting by Macri, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was Waiting by Macri here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Once again, I'm your host, Jell, and we like to kick the show off with the new game releases for this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are in theaters. So, starting with PlayStation 4. This week, we've got Boundless, Claws of Furry, NBA 2K19, Nefarious, Project Cars 2, Ferrari Essentials Pack, so DLC pack for that, Strange Brigade, Texas Cowboy Character Pack, Super Street, the game, The Sims 4 Get Together, V-Rally 4, then tomorrow, Construction Simulator 2 Console Edition, Fossil Hunters, Pinball FX 3 Star Wars Pinball Solo Pack, Shadow of the Tomb Raider Croft Steelbook Edition, and Stay, followed by Marble Duel on the 13th and the 14th. So that's Friday. We'll be bringing us Black Clover Quartet Knights, which is a fighting game. I think it had some RPG elements too, based on the anime Black Clover. Neon Wall, which is some kind of weird VR puzzle game. NHL 19 is on Friday. Salt and Sanctuary, Shadow of the Tomb Raider regular edition. I guess the Steelbook comes out a few days earlier. And the one that has me most intrigued, Trickster VR, which has nothing to do with the MMORPG Trickster, but it is a 4-player co-op VR dungeon crawler, which is something I've been waiting for my PlayStation VR pretty much since the day I bought it. That has been thing I wanted number one, 4-player dungeon crawl where I swing swords at things. Moving on, though, Xbox One this week is getting NBA 2K19, NHL 19, Super Deluxe Edition apparently is already out. Project Cars 2 Ferrari Essentials Pack, Strange Brigade Texas Cowboy Character Pack, Super Street the Game, V-Rally 4. Adios Amigos comes out tomorrow, Construction Simulator 2 Console Edition, Fossil Hunters, Pinball FX Star Wars Pinball Solo Pack, Revenant Dogma, whatever that is, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Croft Steelbook Edition, and Time Carnage for some reason. For anyone unfamiliar, unless this is a completely different game with the same name, Time Carnage was a PlayStation VR wave shooter. You stood in one place and just shot at enemies as they came at you, but you traveled through time while you did it. Apparently, it's getting an Xbox One port, likely without VR, because it doesn't have a VR, and there's a Switch port coming too. Anyway, Friday, the Xbox One has Goner. It's spelled with weird capitalization. Goner? Goner? I don't know. Capital G, lowercase O, capital N-N-E-R. Why the O gotta be lowercase? What you got against the O? Nefarious Neon Wall, so I guess Neon Wall has a non-VR mode. NHL 19, Raised, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Moving on, Nintendo Switch this week has Dust and Elysian Tale, which I will absolutely vouch for. If you watched my Ancient episodes, you know I was a big fan of that game. Good, very Vanillaware-inspired Metroidvania RPG adventure. It's got a long history behind it. Anyway, today, Cat Quest, Mercenary Saga Chronicles, and NBA 2K19 have come out for Switch. Tomorrow, Grandpa and the Zombies, Stay, and Time Carnage for some reason. But Friday is when Nintendo likes their releases to be, and so there's a lot of releases on Thursday. Nintendo likes their releases on Friday, so here's a bunch of things coming out Thursday. I guess Thursday is their digital day, isn't it? Whatever. Anyway, Thursday, the Switch is getting Bastion, Danger Mouse, The Danger Games, which is pretty much an endless runner kart racer hybrid ported from phones, Defunct, Doeling's Arcade, Nefarious, Old School Musical, which was that game I was talking about last week with all the chickens and the pixel art. Looks like a fun music game. Also, Senran Kagura Reflections, as well as Yumi as DLC. Fair warning, Senran Kagura Reflections is more of a weird HD Rumble experiment. It's not really a hack and slash like the rest of the Senran Kagura series, so fair warning. Moving on, Shadow Fight 2. SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy gets Thief Arthur as its first DLC character this Thursday. Super Dungeon Tactics, Surgeon Simulator CPR, the Mahjong Huntress, the Spectrum Retreat, the Warlock of Firetop Mountain Goblin Scourge Edition. That sounds familiar. Is this a remake of an ancient game? Because that sounds like a remake of an ancient game. I'm going to have to search that one. And Wasteland 2 Director's Cut. And then, on Friday, Furi comes out for Nintendo Switch, as does the new Nintendo Labo, Toy-Con 03 Vehicle Kit, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torna the Golden Country, which is a huge expansion DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Pretty much a whole other adventure. It's a prequel. It takes place before the original game. Lets you see a lot of the hero and villain blades before they had their memory wiped and what they did in the past that brought them to be who they are. Big expansion pack, and people who have the season pass, they will, of course, be getting that. Meanwhile, the 3DS this week has nothing, and the Vita this week has Stay and Sultan Sanctuary. Moving on, next week, PlayStation 4 will be getting Anodyne, Blind, Brawlout, which I know is a pretty interesting Smash clone, Downward Spiral Horus Station, which I think that's a VR game. I thought it was supposed to come out earlier. However, Fishing Sim World, Hover, which is a Jet Set Radio-inspired indie game that's been in development for a very long time. Labyrinth of Refrain, Coven of Dusk, which is an Etrian Odyssey-style first-person dungeon crawler with custom parties, so I'm kind of interested. Legendary Fishing, Mutant Football League Dynasty Edition, which, yes, is sort of a indie recreation of Mutant League Football minus the license because EA technically owns Mutant League Football, but they don't own Mutant Football League. Scribblenauts, Megapack, Splody, Transference, Unearthing Mars 2, The Ancient War, which I am excessively excited about. That is a PlayStation VR game. You might, if you listen to some of my old episodes, I was interested in Unearthing Mars because it was available in English on the Hong Kong store for a really long while. Wasn't actually a very good game. It was a lot of just walking around on Mars, and then suddenly robots happen at the very end, and you shoot at them. Unearthing Mars 2 is about going to Mars and traveling back in time and fighting in an ancient war, and it looks like a rail shooter. It might be a first-person shooter, looks like a rail shooter, not sure. Anyway, following that, Warface. And then on the 20th, the PS4 version of SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy will be getting Thief Arthur, along with The Gardens Between, is coming out. 8-Bit Armies, My Brother Rabbit. And that sums up next week for PS4. Let's see here. Xbox One, what are you getting next week? It's getting Fish and Sim World, Scribblenauts Megapack, Transference. Interesting. I think Transference is actually a VR game, so I guess there's a non-VR version of that. That's very good. Hover. And let me double-check that date. Yeah. 8-Bit Armies, Collector's Edition, Anodyne, My Brother Rabbit, and Wenjia. Moving on, Nintendo Switch next week is getting Labyrinth of Refrain, Coven of Dusk, Legendary Fishing, Mutant Football League Dynasty Edition, Omvorm, that's a name, Scribblenauts Megapack, Sword of the Guardian, which I think is a Guardian Heroes-inspired beat-em-up, but, made by, one or two guys. Doesn't look that great, but it might have potential. Anyway, Undertale also comes out next week for your Switch. Siegecraft Commander on the 19th, A Case of Distrust, Hover, Lightfingers, Reigns, Kings and Queens, Retimed, The Gardens Between, Broken Sword 5, The Serpent's Curse. Isn't that a point-and-click adventure? That might be a pretty good fit for the Switch. My Brother Rabbit, The Banner Saga Trilogy, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torn of the Golden Country comes out a second time for some reason next week. What? I don't understand this at all. Okay. Whatever. Anyway, next week, 3DS has nothing, and Vita has Pato Box. So that sums up our new game releases for this week and next week. Now it's time for Anime in Theaters. Laughing Under the Clouds Gaiden Part 1 and 2 double feature is supposedly still in theaters until the 15th, though you'll have to check your local theater for specific dates. Dragon Ball Z Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, will be in theaters September 15th and 17th, dubbed only. Haikyuu the Movie, Battle of Concepts, will be in theaters September 19th, subbed, September 22nd, subbed, and September 23rd, subbed, so subbed all around. Digimon Adventures Tri-Future will be in theaters September 20th, dubbed. And here's the new entry on this list, My Hero Academia 2 Heroes. So the My Hero Academia movie will be in theaters September 25th, dubbed, September 26th, subbed, September 27th, dubbed, September 29th, dubbed, October 2nd, subbed. I'm sure there's some kind of pattern to those releases, but I have not seen them. See, that's Tuesday after next, dubbed. Following day, subbed. Day after that, dubbed. And then nothing on Friday. Saturday, dubbed. And then the following Tuesday, subbed. Okay. Wonky pattern. Whatever. And My Neighbor Totoro will be in theaters September 30th, dubbed, October 1st, subbed, and October 3rd, dubbed, as part of the seemingly never-ending, and I ain't complaining, Studio Ghibli Fest. So that wraps up our new game releases for this week. What is coming out next week? And what anime are in theaters? So, I do believe that means that it is time for me to kick you back to the music before we get on with our video game news and information. It's really weird, because I knew Tokyo Game Show was coming up, right? And we're getting a lot of Tokyo Game Show trailers, but Sony instead did like a pre-Tokyo Game Show to show off the stuff that they're advertising. I'm pretty sure Tokyo Game Show is the 19th, right? I need to double check this. Tokyo Game Show 2018. Yeah, September 19th to Sunday, September 23rd. That's going to be really embarrassing for someone I know. But yeah, there is enough Tokyo Game Show trailers coming out that we didn't know Tokyo Game Show hasn't happened yet. That's actually kind of interesting. Because yeah, everyone's releasing their Tokyo Game Show trailers. It's sort of the E3 for Japan, but at the same time, it's not like E3 at all, because they're not keeping anything close to their chest. It's just like, yeah, here's Tokyo Game Show stuff. So that's good. It's good. So interesting things all around. It'll be interesting to know how this all works. Yeah, Variety is listing PlayStation lineup tour kicks off Tokyo Game Show with a bang. It hasn't started yet. Sega announces Tokyo Game Show lineup. Watch Shadows Die Twice trailer from Tokyo Game Show. Yeah, it hasn't. Man, this is starting to make me question time zones, because everyone thinks the Tokyo Game Show, myself included, has already happened, but it hasn't. We are getting messages from the future. Oh wow! Next Wednesday to cool our jets, but still, lots of interesting, good amount of interesting bits of news. But until then, it is time to kick y'all back to the music before we get on with more GameBabble Live. So here is Crusade with a K by Thorhammer, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. That was Oh Yeah by Alan Gates, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Also, if you miss one of the episodes of my show and you really want to hear it, you tune in late. Don't worry, I finally have the GameBabble Live archive up on YouTube. Just search up GameBabble Live archive. You should slam face first into one of over 60 episodes of GameBabble Live uploaded for your listening pleasure. You can listen to it on YouTube, or there is a link to the Google Drive full of MP3s. Go ahead, head over there, enjoy the episodes. Some of the earlier ones are, of course, a bit rough, but I'm making sure that from this point onward, new episodes are properly cleaned up and highly listenable. But anyway, getting back to where we were, I decided to look up that Warlock of Firetop Mountain game I was mentioning coming to Switch soon. I was like, yeah, that sounds familiar. Is that a remake of an old game? Oh, my God, is it a remake of an old game? So, the Warlock of Firetop Mountain started as a fighting fantasy choose-your-own-adventure book, which, it's a choose-your-own-adventure book, but it actually has a combat system, and you roll dice. It tries to be like a single-player D&D campaign by being a choose-your-own-adventure book with dice. So, that's a thing. And then, at some point in time, they adapted that into a first-person dungeon crawler back on the DS, which honestly looks really nice for a DS game. I never played it myself, but Fighting Fantasy, The Warlock of Firetop Mountain, is a game that came out. But that is not what we're talking about. This new one, which is available also on like Steam and iOS and Android and stuff, instead adapts that very same adventure into a simulation of a tabletop D&D campaign, wherein it's actually presented as a bunch of miniature figures and you're moving them around and so on and so forth. And yes, it is that same thing. So, quite an adventure for the Warlock of Firetop Mountain. That's the thing. Looks kind of fun. I might pick it up, especially because they are promising a mode where I can play as a slime beast and just wreck people. They say there's a story light mode where you can play as the monsters and you just try to kill as many people as possible. Well, good. As for that Revenant Dogma game I was mentioning on Xbox One as a port of another one of Kemco's mobile RPGs, if you're unfamiliar, Kemco's an old Japanese game company, and in recent times they've gotten into this weird habit of using almost RPG Maker-like tools to produce a new RPG every month on iPhone and Android. It's honestly a little silly. And then some of them they're actually porting to consoles. Like, what's it called? They've got, like, Revenant Dogma will probably be released on everything else soon. Ferns Gate, that's the one they released most recently on PlayStation and Switch, and as well as Xbox One and Windows 10. So, that's a thing. And I guess their newest iOS Android game is Alvastia Chronicles? Seems interesting enough. I don't know. Well, I'll see if that one actually gets a port. That one actually seems weirdly similar to something else. So yeah, Kemco being Kemco, doing their thing, love them or hate them. That's what they do. So, where do we begin? Well, how about the fact that everyone thinks Tokyo Game Show has started, but it hasn't! It's next Wednesday! Tokyo Game Show has not started yet, just everyone's releasing their Tokyo Game Show trailers now. So, there could be more coming, but what we already have is very interesting, with the most interesting being that SNK has revealed their next big fighting game, and that is a brand new Samurai Showdown! Or possibly a reboot of the original Samurai Showdown. A little hard to tell. They're basically just showing all the classic characters. We saw Earthquake, Haomaru, Nakaruru, Galford. They're all present and accounted for. What's amazing, though, is that the game actually looks good. After the somewhat laughable look of KOF 14, which required quite a few patches to fix stuff and get it looking okay. You know what? Honestly, KOF 14 doesn't look that bad. Like, at first we saw it and we were like, wow, these look very PS1, PS2-ish with the graphics when we first saw it. But when you actually see it in action, it was actually pretty okay, especially in the animation department. Like, I will be blunt, KOF 14 had better, and like, the models might have had kind of simplistic looking faces, but the animation was definitely superior to Street Fighter V. Especially the cloth and hair physics, which I know sounds stupid, but one of my big beefs with Street Fighter V was that the cloth and hair would always just go crazy when your characters did attacks. Like, M. Bison kept getting tangled up in his cape, and Armika looked like she was being beaten up by two giant bananas. The cloth and hair physics looked really bad, and I was like, I guess there's nothing they could do about that. And then I see KOF 14, and that game, it actually, like, they did a really good job with the cloth and hair in that one. Like, there's this one character named Mian, who's based on like Chinese stage shows and stuff, and she flies across the screen, and she has this really nice flowing outfit, and it looks fantastic because they did certain things with how they limited the way the physics could move, and they got it looking really right. But Samurai Showdown, the new one, looks even better than that. They are going with more of a Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 4-ish look, where it has, like, the thick painted outlines, sort of, except Samurai Showdown was, like, the first game to do that. Seriously, go back, especially look at Samurai Showdown 3's artwork. So, they have that. The character models actually look really nice. The animation thus far is looking really nice, and yes, it will be bloody. In fact, I kind of like what they did with Nakaruru. They were showing some of, slicing people in half, blood flies everywhere. But one of the shots in the trailer is of Nakaruru stabbing towards the camera and apologizing while blood splatters across her. And it's a really, really dramatic shot, especially because, they also showed restraint. Like, it's not this bright red, stupid, gushing everywhere Mortal Kombat blood like Samurai Showdown Sen had. Like, it's a semi-transparent spatter, and, like, good job on the facial animations, because it is one of those Nakaruru, like, you really see Nakaruru feels really bad that she's murdering you. But and that contrast is really, really good. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, that is solid. That is a very Nakaruru kill. You know, they still kept her being like, being herself, being very like sweet and nice and innocent, but her job to kill you, and she did, and nice, just very nice. A dramatic contrast to the hilarity that was Samurai Showdown Sen. To anyone unfamiliar, Samurai Showdown Sen was a 3D Samurai Showdown game on the Xbox 360, and it was a gigantic pile of crap. There was nothing good about that game. The character models looked bad. The setting was America for some reason. It had a bunch of new characters, was missing a lot of old characters. They were more spared than anything else. It was very, very dark to the point where you actually couldn't see Hanzo in most of the stages. And, like, the only upside to Samurai Showdown Sen was that it was the fatalities. Because if you finished your opponent with a strong slash, you could chop their head off or cut them in half, and blood would spray everywhere, and that was regardless of the character. Normally, they don't let you chop Rimururu in half, which is, like, Nakaruru's younger sidekick. Normally it's like, women and children, no, they get spared. They don't get to be sliced in half. Nah, Samurai Showdown said not only did it let you slice them in half, but they could slice you in half, and it was hilarious. Because, okay, you have Rimururu, little girl fighting with a magic ice cube, basically. It's an ice spear, but it's a magic ice cube. And she could go. This little girl could chop you in half. Blood sprays everywhere, Mortal Kombat style, and she hops around going, yeah, I did it, and she's not supposed to be a psychopath. So this is a dramatic contrast to how Nakaruru is, like, actually properly handled in this new Samurai Showdown. Fingers crossed it turns out nice. I'm gonna be honest, I felt KOF 14 was a little on the stiff side in terms of the controls, and the combo mechanics were a little bit too restrictive. I want to like KOF 14. There's a lot of it I like on paper, but in practice, the game and me just didn't get along. I definitely like KOF 13 more. But we'll talk about SNK's new game, SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy, which I'm going to tell you right now turned out way better than it had any right to. And that gives me a lot more faith and hope for Samurai Showdown turning out pretty darn good. I'm very excited for that. Moving on, remember how The Last Remnant was getting delisted and we all scrambled to rush to Steam in order to pick up our copies of The Last Remnant before it went away 10 years after release, because the PC release was actually enhanced. It was, like, really good? Well, found out why. They're doing a Last Remnant remastered in December. Shoot, we have a release date. Let me pull that up. But yeah, The Last Remnant Remastered, coming to PS4. They are switching the engine from Unreal Engine 3 to Unreal Engine 4. And, let's see, December 6th, The Last Remnant Remastered comes out on PS4, switching the engine, has the PC version content, some small quality of life changes to allow you to, like, move around the map better. But in general, it's a pretty straight port of The Last Remnant for the game's 10th anniversary, partially because they felt bad they were never able to make a PS3 version, because they promised they would and they didn't. And I'm very interested in this. Even though a friend of mine actually gifted me a copy of The Last Remnant on Steam, I've been trying to make some space. I think I'll be picking up a new computer and I'll try it out there. But I'm really thinking I might have to pick up the remaster, because The Last Remnant was a really, really, really weird game, but I'm gonna be blunt, it was completely unplayable on Xbox 360. Not only did it have a kind of rough frame rate, but the text was too small. I am not kidding when I say The Last Remnant is the reason why I am wearing glasses right now. Before The Last Remnant came out, I didn't need glasses. After The Last Remnant, and I didn't even play that long. I played like 1 hour of The Last Remnant, and I've got glasses now. This was a huge problem last generation, because a lot of us were still on standard definition TVs, like myself, and developers just didn't think about that. They were developing everything on computers, and they didn't think about how big they needed to make text to make it readable. On 360, there are only 2 RPGs that are playable on a standard definition TV. Tales of Vesperia, which is also getting a re-release because this is the generation of re-releases, and Magna Carta 2, which is, of course, the personal one I will vouch for. I loved Magna Carta 2. Completely different game from Magna Carta 1. You don't have to have played Magna Carta 1 to enjoy it. I felt it was rock solid. Really surprised me. Weird battle system, but once you get it, that's very good. And supposedly that's the same thing with Last Remnant. Honestly, these first screenshots of the game, of the remaster, give me a lot of hope, because even though they are pretty much just porting the game straight over, just a few little tweaks to, like, the materials and the lighting engine can add up to a lot. And the Last Remnant remaster, it actually looks really good. Especially if it runs at a solid 60 FPS this time. Because one of the main things I remember from last generation was that no one could keep a solid freaking frame rate on any game. Everything had a bad frame rate last generation. Have I ever mentioned that I hate last generation? I honestly consider the Xbox 360, PS3, Wii generation to be the worst console generation in the history of video games. I stand by that opinion. I've heard some people try to say the PS1 generation is the worst, and I will slap them. It had a rough start, but it picked up. I mean, 1998 was that generation. That's the best year in gaming. Anyway, though, does look like we need to take a short break. So, give me a second. Let me prep you all a break. Oh, that is definitely going away. But, yeah. So, we are going to take a short break, so go kick you back to the music. Coming up next is I Don't Know About You by Geo Davis here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned for more GameBabble Live. Thanks again for listening. That was Black by Pale Waves here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. But if you ever miss a show, just look up GameBabble Live Archive on YouTube and you will slam face first into over 60 episodes of GameBabble Live, including this one in probably like a day or two after I get it done. Hopefully today. Like to get it done today. Had some technical difficulties with last week's show that caused it to be, the day after, but still, that's the general time frame we're working with. I hope you enjoy. Anyway, so, though Tokyo Game Show is not until next Wednesday, which is unfortunate for my show, come to think of it, we've got a lot of different Tokyo Game Show pre-show announcement things coming and going. And that's been our major focus. So let us continue. The creator of Yakuza was mentioning that he wanted to do a new game that wasn't Yakuza, that would be unexpected and very different. It actually isn't. The game is called Judge Eyes, and it's basically Yakuza meets Phoenix Wright. You play like a prosecuting attorney, and you go out and you beat people up and collect evidence. It's Yakuza, but with courtroom drama. And no Kiryu. It's like, no, actually, this is somewhat expected, kind of. It's still very Yakuza. But considering how well the Yakuza formula has worked out, I can't blame him for for trying to step away from the Yakuza series and going, no, let's make Yakuza right. Anyway, let's see. Kingdom Hearts 3 has a new trailer out showing off the Big Hero 6 world, which is a very interesting choice for a world. I mean, I know the movie was successful, but I didn't know it was quite successful enough to warrant a Kingdom Hearts world. And at the same time, that one's actually very interesting because technically, Big Hero 6 is a Marvel property. If you're unfamiliar, it is an old Marvel comic book that came out eons ago, and then Disney heavily adapted it into a Disney animated feature. But yeah, so that's getting the Kingdom Hearts 3 world. That's interesting. Also, while we're talking about Square Enix, the thing that has me really happy, though, is they just announced in 2019, they're releasing Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered for PS4 and Switch, and I couldn't be happier. I love Crystal Chronicles. It is actually one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. I say this phrase a lot, but for those of you unfamiliar, because we should preface things, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was a 4-player co-op action RPG. It is approximately 1:10. That means it is time for the recording equipment to inexplicably fail. The quality of the recording will now drop to rather annoying levels and will return once this segment is over. I apologize for our station's random hiccups. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was a 4-player co-op action RPG for the Nintendo GameCube from, Squaresoft, Square Enix. And, it was really neat, but in order to play 4-player, every single player had to have their own GBA and a GBA to GameCube link cable, so that way they would have their own little private screens to mess around with. Except there wasn't a whole lot of inventory management, making this entire you need a GBA and a link cable in order to play this game shtick kind of dumb and pointless. Also, people were really not happy with the whole carrying the chalice thing. I don't know if that's going to be remedied or not. But it does raise a lot of questions about Crystal Chronicles Remastered, because the good news is that Crystal Chronicles Remastered will feature online multiplayer. The question then becomes, will it have offline multiplayer? It's the stupidest thing to ask, but considering they were all, every player needs to have their own little GBA in order to do private things on their screen, which they really didn't need to, I wonder if they're going to say, okay, fine, but every single player needs their own console, right? Is it going to be online only, or will it have local? Hopefully it'll have local, because even if they were to keep the whole, everyone has their own inventory screen thing, our screens are big enough, and the screen resolution high enough that you could just put those little GBA screens, floating above characters' heads or something. And again, you barely use the things. The requirement of the GBA and the link cable was so dumb. But I own a lot of GBAs and link cables now entirely because of that. Because, I'm not kidding, I really love Crystal Chronicles. And this is going to be really interesting to see people try to play it online, because I'm going to be blunt with you. You need communication and teamwork. No game in the history of mankind has required the amount of teamwork and cooperation that Crystal Chronicles requires, to the point where I'm not actually sure humanity has evolved to the point where we can play Crystal Chronicles properly. The game is entirely about teaming up, and a good example of that is the bucket. See, in Crystal Chronicles, you're traveling through this miasma. There's a poison mist, and your only protection from it is this chalice that gives you a certain radius where you're not in the mist. But one of the players has to pick up and carry that chalice. They carry the bubble that keeps you safe from the mist. Now, there is actually a gameplay reason why they did this. They didn't know what to do with the camera. They were like, we can't have, what player does the camera focus on? Where does the camera go? How do we keep the players together? And their solution was the bucket. The camera focuses on the bucket. What this means, and everyone always looks at whoever has to carry the chalice as being, the team whipping boy, and that's the completely wrong way to look about it. And that's the completely wrong way to look at it, because whoever has the chalice is the party leader. They control the air bubble. They're the ones that determine where the camera goes, where the screen goes, and who is going to be lost in the mist. So you have to look at it that way, and no one ever does. That's just the beginning of things. Another thing I need to say about Crystal Chronicles: do not look at it as Final Fantasy Gauntlet. When that game came out, I'm not kidding, I played multiplayer with 4 or 5 different groups of people, and in every single one of them, there's one guy who goes, oh man, it's going to be great, it's like Final Fantasy Gauntlet, and that guy always gets killed. Because you don't play this like Gauntlet. If anything, Crystal Chronicles is the inverse of Gauntlet. Gauntlet, of course, is a game where, you've got 4 people and they're facing off against a swarm of tons of really, really easy-to-kill monsters.
Here, you and your party of 4 usually outnumber the monsters. You're usually only fighting 1 or 2, but they're big, meaty monsters that take a lot of work to bring down. And the combat is much slower paced, but requires more skill and strategy. Because in order to do, you've got a 3-hit combo, but you have to have, really precise timing to actually do the 3-hit combo. But more than that, a lot of it is focused on charge attacks and combination attacks. Because when you're charging up your moves, a little aiming cursor appears on the ground. And when you see one of your teammates aiming their aiming cursor, you can charge up like a fire spell, put your aiming cursor on top of theirs, and then bing, bing, you can enchant their charge attack with fire, and now they're doing a fire charge attack. Or someone else is charging up fire. Oh, you can throw in a fire spell as well, and then bing, bing, now you're casting fire too. There is a good chunk of that in Crystal Chronicles. That's one of the things that makes it work. You have to look at your teammates and go, oh, hey, my teammate is doing a thing. I should help him out. I should pitch in. It is very, very, very teamwork-centric, and if you don't use teamwork, you will lose. And most people who have played it don't know how teamwork works. Either way, I love Crystal Chronicles. I felt it had a great sense of atmosphere. I loved the slower, more strategic gameplay, the fact that it wasn't a button masher, even though it is a very simplistic game on paper. In practice, it was really good. I love Crystal Chronicles. I'm so happy to hear that it's coming back on PS4 and Switch. I kind of hope they make a new one. But until then, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered makes me very, very happy. Speaking of remasters, so Cygames, as we know, Konami turned into a dumpster fire. And they are starting to actually release some games, but it's usually because other companies come up to them and go, hey, Konami, think you could let us make a thing? Case in point, Cygames. Cygames came up and said, wow, Zone of the Enders, the second runner, is a really cool game. Can we remake it in 4K with VR support? And Konami's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So they did that, and now Cygames is actually interested in making a new Zone of the Enders, which is going to be very interesting. It was very much a Hideo Kojima project. So it's like, can they really pull it off? Be interesting to see. Moving on, though, another interesting remaster, Ninja Warriors. They are making a Ninja Warriors remaster called Ninja Warriors Once Again. For anyone unfamiliar, no, this has nothing to do with the TV show. Rather, it's an old Taito arcade game that years later got a drastically enhanced Super Nintendo sequel remake, weird thing. It's a really solid brawler that was on Super Nintendo. And now they are going to take the Super Nintendo game and enhance it further, finally adding 2-player simultaneous support, as well as adding in 2 brand new characters. On top of, it looks like they've added more frames of animation to the sprites, made them more detailed. They're making it widescreen. They're putting in more enemies to fight. The whole thing is just completely retooled from the ground up, giving it the same kind of treatment they gave Wild Guns Reloaded. Well, now we're getting Ninja Warriors once again, and yes, it's from the same company. It's from Natsume. I'm very excited to see this. And while we're on the subject, hey, they just announced Space Harrier is coming to Switch with new features. We don't know all of them. We know that everything from the 3DS port will be in there, including the final boss from the Master System game being added into the arcade game. That's a really cool feature. I love Space Harrier. I look forward to buying it once again for my Switch, because you can never have enough copies of Space Harrier. Speaking of things I really like, according to the Australian Ratings Board, a game called Puyo Puyo Esports is in development, which makes me laugh. I mean, Puyo Puyo is kind of the original esport. Look on YouTube. There's a video from, 1996 of a massive Puyo Puyo tournament with competitors in costumes and a whole arena full of people. And that was Puyo Puyo 2. That was Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. They had quite the tournament back in 1996. That makes me really happy. So, Puyo Puyo makes sense as an esport. I just wonder, is it going to be a really basic version of Puyo Puyo, or is it going to actually feature the characters and flash that I feel makes the game. Anyway, good to hear there's another Puyo Puyo on the horizon. Let's see. Also, in remake and re-release news, because that's all this console generation is sometimes, R-Type Dimensions 1 and 2 are coming to Switch. Or R-Type Dimensions, is coming to Switch. R-Type Dimensions was released back on Xbox 360 as an Xbox Live Arcade game, and it was a remake of R-Type 1 and 2, and now it's getting a Switch version. Hooray. While we're on the subject of the Nintendo Switch, though, they have announced a new Omega Labyrinth game titled Omega Labyrinth Life for the Switch. Balls in your court, Nintendo. For anyone unfamiliar, I love saying that phrase. Actually, I don't, but I can't think of anything better to say. Someone get me a thesaurus. So, Omega Labyrinth is a kind of lewd dungeon crawler, and the second game of the series, Omega Labyrinth Z, was set to come to America. It was completely translated and ready to go, and then Sony stepped in and said no. They just outright said, you are not allowed to release this game in America, screw you. We don't care that you have already finished the translation, gotten the go-ahead, and we're about to release the game. We are vetoing your ability to release this game in America, effectively robbing the company of a whole lot of money, the translation company, which was P-Cube. I'm still quite salty about this. And while people look at this and go, yay, maybe this one could come to America because it's being handled by Nintendo instead of Sony, at the same time, I don't know if P-Cube wants to take the risk again, and I don't know if anyone else would translate it. And I'd rather Nippon Ichi stay as far away from the game as possible. I'm not exactly happy with their translations, but well, we will see. Maybe Xseed will handle it. But, of course, this is where you're going to say, but wait, we're talking about Nintendo, one of the most censorious video game companies out there. Indeed, and what they pulled on the Wii U and 3DS with Fire Emblem Fates and hashtag FE Tokyo Mirage Sessions, yeah, that was some BS. That was some of the worst censorship we've seen in video games in a very long while, and I'm still quite salty about it. But it looks like Nintendo's trying to shed that image. It looks like they noticed they got a lot of backlash for that, and that Nintendo has a weird image problem where they are seen as the kiddie company, where they're seen as the family-friendly company, and there's a certain strength to that because we do need more family-friendly games, but it causes them to be a massive turnoff to the more hardcore gamers because they always go, well, my favorite game either isn't going to be released on a Nintendo system or Nintendo's going to censor it or do something stupid with it. After all, they've been doing that since the company first started business. Goodness knows there were tons of NES games that were censored because of Nintendo's regulations. And so we're kind of salty about this. But in Japan, Nintendo's been pretty loose and open with their games. And it looks like Nintendo of America is realizing that can be a real positive. And they've been loosening things up. I mean, they let Senran Kagura Reflections get released, and then there's that one weird game that's just like a bunch of answering machine messages and photos of a girl in sexy cosplay. I don't understand, but that showed up on the U.S. store. Not really translated, but it was there. So there is a chance that Nintendo will actually let Omega Labyrinth Life get released if it were to get a U.S. release. But would it? Will it? Could it? These are important questions we have to ask. But those are questions, and I don't know if they're even going to be answered. But while I'm still salty about that, it is time for us to once again take a break. So here is Ska Zombie by Banff, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening.
That was The Last of the Real Ones by Fall Out Boy, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. So, Tokyo Game Show is coming up, and a lot of companies couldn't hold back from revealing a bunch of stuff. It's coming out relatively soonish, some stuff before the end of the year, a lot of stuff for 2019. I'd say the furthest away one is probably Gungrave Gore. Mentioned this before, but a new Gungrave game is in development. They have a teaser trailer out for it, which shows us absolutely nothing. Other than that, it's still Gungrave, and it's coming out winter 2019. So that's a good little more than a year away. So that's a thing. But I think one of the interesting things is some of the stuff happening, of course, in VR. Yes, it's time for the VR break. First and foremost, the PlayStation VR is getting some new bundles for the holiday season. Really good ones, which is good because the PSVR has had some stupid bundles, like the Gran Turismo Sport bundle. Gran Turismo Sport's VR mode is just racing against a single car. They recently added time trials. It's practically nothing. And then there was like a Bravo Team bundle, and Bravo Team is the worst game on PlayStation VR. They've been striking out a lot with that, but this time they've got things right. The newest PSVR bundles will be, there's one that will have Moss and Astrobot, and the other will be Super Hot VR and Creed. Basically, all of these are lower priced, like, more indie games, but they've proven to be very good. I guess Astrobot isn't really an indie game. That's in-house Sony. But they've all proven to be very good. These are very good picks because, like, Moss is sort of a Ico-style adventure where it's third person and you're controlling this mouse and you're helping her out and she's chopping things up with a sword. It's very nice. And then Astrobot is a third-person platformer built off of, there's a free download on PSN of the Game Room VR, or Playroom VR, which is in-house Sony. It's a bunch of goofy things you can do with your PlayStation VR, and one of them was this game called Robo Rescue, which was a third-person platformer where you played a big robot and you were remote controlling a little robot that was rescuing other little robots and kicking them into your controller in VR, and it was really cool. Problem was, it was one stage, and ever since the PSVR launched, everyone has said, make this into a real game, make more stages, and that's what Astrobot is, so I'm excited about that. Super Hot VR, meanwhile, has been the single most highly recommended VR game ever made ever, because it's fantastic. And then Creed Rise to Glory is a boxing game coming very soon. I think it's the 25th for the PlayStation VR, and that will again appeal to that audience. So for the younger audience or those who like more lighthearted adventure, you got Moss and Astrobot. For those who want more serious games, you got Super Hot VR and Creed. Very, very good picks. So what else is going on? Well, first of all, they've announced a Kingdom Hearts VR experience coming this winter. Is it December? A holiday season. Going to be a free download. It's 10 minutes long. First person, you get to run around whack Heartless with a Keyblade. And I'm like, well, I'll take it. Why not? Sure, throw a Heartless at me. I hit him with a Keyblade. Let's go. Heartless whack-a-mole. I am on board, especially because it's free. You know what I'm even more on board with, though? Space Channel 5 VR. That's right, they're making a VR Space Channel 5. They finally showed some footage of it. Not really like they haven't really shown any first-person footage of it, but they have shown that it's like based on the first stage of Space Channel 5, but all rendered in real time. They do have new character models looking really nice. That is coming to PlayStation VR. Also, Hot Shots Golf / Everybody's Golf, whatever you want to call it, also getting a VR version. They're making a new VR Hot Shots Golf, Everybody's Golf. And also Demo Reborn is going to have a VR mode as well. And of course, Deracine, the new one from Software, where you play like an invisible person, possibly a fairy walking around a boarding school with time frozen. Yeah, that one's going to have a PSVR. That's PSVR that's coming soon. I think that's December. So, yeah, that even though Tokyo Game Show hasn't started yet, they've already begun showing some nice VR things. It's good to hear that's picking up. As anyone who's ever listened to this show knows, I love VR. I love my PlayStation VR. I think there's a lot of potential there, but I do admit it's a rough sell because there aren't a lot of big AAA budgeted games for the PlayStation VR. You know, people, that's what a lot of people look at. They're like, where's the big thing? Where's the big brand name stuff? And that's not there. Right now, VR is being carried entirely by indie developers. And it needs to be. Because the big AAA companies, they look at VR, they go, that's too much of a risk. Yeah, sure, they might have 2-3 million headsets in people's homes, but that means the most we can sell is 2-3 million copies of our game. That's not good enough. We're aiming, 3 million is the low end for a AAA game. They're aiming for 5 million. So they can't get 5 million sold on a VR game, and they could do something that just has VR support. But that means they need to rein themselves in, because VR games not only have to display 2 images, one for each eye, but they have to run at a solid 60 FPS. And a lot of companies are like, nope, solid 60 FPS. What you nope. And, they just aren't doing that. And if there's any advantage, anyone who's not interested in VR, if there's any advantage to the push for VR, it's the fact that it's forcing games to run at 60. So, look on the bright side. But yeah, it is a weird thing. It's a hard sell. So, there we go. That's our VR update. So, how about our Dead or Alive 6 update? They have shown the Tokyo Game Show trailer, and as I predicted when it was first revealed, it's the best trailer we've seen. We see the Lost World Jurassic Park stage from Dead or Alive 4 is back and better than ever. It's a whole new version of it. You can kick people into pterodactyl eggs, and they get attacked by a big old pterodactyl. Good times there. Ayane, Marie Rose, and Honoka have all been shown, and they are looking right and It's actually really hard to see Honoka, but they look about right. But while it is looking promising on one hand, on another hand, the game is now claiming to be, quote, 20% complete. Now with a February release date. So, couple of months, it is 20% complete. And, they have not revealed the whole roster, but they have revealed that Nyo Tengu will be pre-ordered DLC, and if you get the special edition, you'll get Phase 4 as DLC too. So, let's recap. The game is supposedly 20% complete. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, they're lying about that. Okay, fine. Why are you lying about it then? Fine, maybe the game is 75% complete. Why would you claim it's 20% complete? Why? What is the PR reasoning behind going into an interview and saying, hey, our game is only 20% complete. It comes out in a couple months. It is flagrantly rushed and will not have all of its content. Who thinks that's a good idea? What has to be wrong with you? But Dead or Alive 6 is proving to be a comedy of just bad PR decisions. You know what? That latest trailer actually makes it look kind of goodish. Maybe it'll turn out okay, but they've already said it won't have tag team mode. They've already said that Nyo Tengu and Phase 4 will not be in the game, and there might be other characters missing for all we know, because it's not going to have the full roster. What if 20% complete comes out in a couple months? Buy our game, pre-order it, get the special edition. Screw you. Most game developers, they do this thing, it's called damage control. I think Koei Tecmo is going the reverse psychology route. Instead of running damage control, they're doing as much damage to their game in every single PR interview as humanly possible. My brain cannot comprehend what is going edition also comes with DLC of 25 special costumes. So if you were wondering if we will have a couple $1,000s worth of DLC, that depends on if the game is successful. But in general, I think the entire world has agreed, we're waiting for Dead or Alive 6 Ultimate. I'm waiting for Dead or Alive 6 Ultimate. I'm going to give it a rent, though. Gamefly is still in business. I looked up to make sure Gamefly was still in business just for this. You know what? Let's talk about something that isn't stupid. Something to make us all happy. So, Lethal League is a very interesting 4-player game of... How do you even describe it? It's like Smash Brothers, except it's combat baseball where everyone's hitting a ball around trying to hit one another and knock each other out. It's really, really neat. There's a new one coming out called Lethal League Blaze that is actually going to be real-time cel-shaded 3D graphics. Looks very nice. And the most exciting thing about it would have to be the music, as they have actually gotten Hideki Naganuma to do the soundtrack for it. And if you don't know who that is, that's the Jet Set Radio guy. And as such, I think you need to hear this trailer. I've got it called up. This probably the most should be played on the radio right now worthy trailer ever. So let's go. Just play this. So yeah, there's that. That's a good time. Now the question is, does Sega know how to take a hint? Because here's the other thing, one of the new characters is a flagrantly Jet Set Radio inspired character. And on top of that, this following week, we've got Hover, which is a fan-made Jet Set Radio wannabe. Could Sega take a hint? Can they hear and go, maybe we should do something about re-releasing Jet Set Radio Future and making a new Jet Set Radio, because apparently, literally the entire gaming world wants a new Jet Set Radio. Nah. Sega taking a hint. That'd be nice. Actually, sometimes they are good at listening to their fans. Sometimes they're not. Ooh, buddy. Let's see. Anything else to talk about? Well, the Wii U got a firmware update last week. Didn't see that coming. Doesn't really do a lot. Just anti-piracy stuff. I'll be good before the break. So how about an actual piece of newsworthy newsy news before we start getting silly? So, Belgium has put in place new anti-gambling regulations that prevent games from being released in Belgium with loot boxes and microtransaction-based BS. And the result has been hilarious. 2K Games, makers of all the sports games that are coming out this week and next week, and I think the previous week, literally all the sports games, 2K Games have actually asked gamers to beg their government to let them release these games with predatory microtransactions in them. That's just sad. That is really, really sad. Just please release these games that have that they're seriously doing this. They are asking their consumers to beg their government So that way they can be taken advantage of? Are you kidding me? Because, I'm sorry, this is the kind of crap they pull. I mean, do you remember NBA 2K17, where they made it so that way it was full-price game, yet they made it where it was literally impossible to really level up your custom characters and really advance the game without spending real money to get virtual currency? Anyone remember that? And after the backlash, they had to, like, completely rebalance the experience gain? Yeah, please, beg your government to let us do that again. No, how about we just beg you to stop? Meanwhile, EA says no to the Belgian government, and they are lawyering up. They are taking the Belgian government to court to try to convince them that their predatory loot box tactics are not gambling and shouldn't be illegal. That's classy. That is not developers. The developers are fine. Seeing publishers go to war for the sake of predatory monetization tactics is amazing. Because here's the thing, you should be able to make money off of your game selling. You should be able to sell a game and make money off that. If you can't, if it's all in microtransactions, then make your game free. Why was NBA 2K17 not a free game? With the way it was handled, it should have been free. There just comes a point where you have to dig your heels in and say, nope, enough is enough. Either you stop with the BS loot boxes or you do something about it. And yes, in Belgium, when games are getting released there, they are removing the loot boxes, which sometimes lays bare how unbalanced the game is without loot boxes. How the game balance is changed for the sake of loot boxes. It's all a very interesting situation because this has actually gotten completely out of hand. In fact, Polygon, this is the most disgusting thing. Polygon wrote an article going at great length to defend the loot boxes in Overwatch, where they're like, oh, well, if you bought the skins individually, they'd be too expensive. And I'm looking at the prices, and I'm like, okay, number one, I would rather pay that exorbitant price for the skin I want to, rather than having to gamble over and over again in loot boxes. Number two, you could do loot boxes or buying them a la carte. Fine, make them pricey. Sometimes all you want is that one item, and the fact that you have to keep buying so many loot boxes makes it wind up costing more if you have bad luck, because that's the gambling element of it. And I don't like it. More than that, they're like, oh, well, it's cheaper to get all the items through loot boxes. Yeah, but I don't want all the items. I just want the one skin that I want. Can I just get that? But more than that, what I really love is that they're listing all these prices and talking about how generous Overwatch is being. And I'm just looking at the monetization of Dead or Alive 5, and I'm like, and you guys give this game crap? Because Dead or Alive 5, it had probably the best monetization I've ever seen in a game. I get a lot of crap for defending it because it literally has thousands of dollars worth of DLC, but that's because they released new costumes on a regular basis for 5 years with your DLC porting over between titles. Yes, it adds up eventually. But they put in the time and the work, and they gave us free stages, and the characters weren't that expensive. Cripes, the cost of an entire new character for Dead or Alive 5 is cheaper than the projected cost of a skin for Overwatch. So hearing companies desperately try to tell me that I know saying it's not as bad as isn't a good defense. But seeing so many people bash Dead or Alive 5, which was actually very conservative with its DLC, there just happened to be a lot of it over the course of 5 years, and then seeing them turn around and try to defend Overwatch, which is being so much worse. No. Anyway, time for that break. So coming up next is, let's see. How about Of Buttons and Levers by Arco's Angel here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. Please enjoy and stay tuned. That was Levitate by 21 Pilots here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and I have good news for Xbox One owners. Well, good news for me. I have a reason to turn on my Xbox One again, because they have just added Zone of the Enders HD, and most importantly, Rumble Roses XX to the Xbox One backwards compatibility list. Let me see. Known Konami 360 title Zone of the Enders HD collection and Rumble Roses XX are now playable on Xbox One. Now playable, so that means today. So that means I might have to stream those. Might maybe have put 200 hours into Rumble Roses XX. Might maybe be one of my favorite Xbox, even though the PS2 Rumble Roses is better. This just makes me happy, because a friend of mine was just talking about how he was hoping that maybe they'd do a PC port or an HD re-release of Rumble Roses XX. Well, this is a good start. I'll take it. Honestly, the Xbox One is such a depressing system at times. I really don't mean to be mean to you Xbox One owners. In fact, my deepest apologies. But yeah, if you look, every time I do the game release lists for the week, I always start with PS4, and then I go to Xbox One, and then I go to Switch, and there are so many games that are on PS4 and Switch that aren't on Xbox One. There's very few Xbox One exclusives. I hate to tell you this, but it's honest. And every time I talk about a game, I always say PS4 and Switch, because it probably isn't getting an Xbox One release. Sometimes PS4, Switch, PC, but getting it on Xbox One is tricky. And I feel bad about that. I don't want to be Mr. Console War here. I don't want to be that guy, but then again, I talk a lot about Japanese games, and you could probably guess how well the Xbox One is doing in Japan. Hint, not well. Anyway, speaking of normal people, so this week, Marvel's Spider-Man, that's the proper title for it, has been released, and all of the normal, sensible people are playing that and enjoying that, and I gotta say, it is looking fine. This is part of a new initiative Marvel is doing, because for a while, a lot of the new Marvel games were not turning out well. There was actually a good period of time where EA had the Marvel license and things just weren't working out. And now, they were letting a bunch of other companies do Marvel games and they weren't working out. And now they're like, okay, fine. How about we actually get companies that know what they're doing to take their time and make games? Because the biggest problem with licensed games is that they have to come out at the same time as the movie. Every time, that's the problem with licensed games. So we got to get it out at the same time as the movie. And you need the specifics of the movie finalized before you have anything you can build a game off of. And it is so the movie has to be out of the planning stage and into the filming stage, and it takes a lot less time to film a movie than it does to program and develop a game. So every time you have these developers, they're just rushing to get their games done so that way they can come out to coincide with the movie, and it never works out. Or rarely works out, at least. But we've seen recently some licensed games that were actually good because they weren't based on a specific movie. The Batman Arkham series, of course, being the big breakout hit. It wasn't based on any specific Batman property or movie. It was its own Batman thing, but it was still a Batman game. But they were able to take their time, take 3 years or so to develop the game, and they produced a phenomenal Batman game that has gone down in legend. Spider-Man is the same thing. See, it's made by Insomniac Games, who made the Infamous series, which are these free-roaming, open-world superhero games. And hey, guess what? Spider-Man back on PS1, back when people liked it. Spider-Man 2 on PS1, I've never played it, but everyone always talks about it, because even though it was on PS1, it was a free-roaming, open-world game where you swung around the city as Spider-Man and stopped crimes and beat up villains. And it was pretty darn great for a PS1 game. And ever since then, people have been like, this is the standard by which all Spider-Man games should be judged. Spider-Man games had been pretty good for a bit, but they started to get bad. But that sort of set the tone for what a Spider-Man game should be. So getting Insomniac, who already makes free-roaming open-world superhero games, to make a free-roaming open-world superhero game, but with Spider-Man, very good call. And from what I've seen, they've done a very good job. Beautiful graphics, some pretty fun-looking combat. I'm seeing some goofy air juggles, lots of freedom, lots of stuff to do. And one of the things that was particularly pointed out to me is that if you try to stop a crime and you screw up, when you restart, the crime is over and they got away with it. Like, you don't just get to keep retrying until you stop the crime. No, the bank got robbed. You screwed up, Spider-Man. So that's kind of neat and interesting, and a lot of people are just really loving Spider-Man. I did not pick it up because, of course, I always grab the weird things. I'm not really that big of a Spider-Man fan anyway, but a lot of people are loving it. You have to remember, this is a non-profit show. I don't make any money. I'm not sponsored by anyone. If someone just walked up to me and gave me a copy of Spider-Man for PS4, I would be playing it right now. And I would tell you how it is. But that's not how things work. I have to pick and choose my battles. And so I, of course, go the weird and slightly questionable route every time. Because I don't care that much about Spider-Man. But I'm happy to see that it looks like it's turned out really good. A lot of people are happy with it. But what I'm happy with, what I chose to pick up, what really surprised me, SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy. Now, SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy was announced a while back, and it is an all-girl fighting game featuring characters from a couple different franchises. Basically, most of them are just recycled from King of Fighters 14. Only Shermie and female Terry Bogard are actually new to the game. Everyone else, they just copy-pasted over, but now they're in ludicrous outfits, fighting one another while being incredibly embarrassed in a tag team competition. And the first thing you think when you see the game is, so it's KOF 14 with less characters, skimpy outfits, and a tag team mechanic. Big freaking deal. But then they say, no, we're going to simplify it and make it fun and silly, and it's going to have items and easy combos and stuff. It's like, okay, so it's crap KOF. Still, I was curious about how it would turn out, especially because last week I played Blade Strangers. And Blade Strangers has literally the same concept and, control scheme where, the far left button, whether that's square or Y or what we would normally think of as X, the far left button on your controller is your auto combo, is your weak attack. Hit it a couple times, do an auto combo. That top button is your strong attack. Hit that to do a strong, and then specials are the far right button and a direction. Literally the same control scheme. But Blade Strangers really disappointed me. The movesets were just really bland. The game felt slow and clunky, and though there was more to it under the hood, it just didn't feel good to play. Characters just didn't feel like they had a lot of options. Even though they secretly did, all the options felt the same. SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy is the literal inverse of that. On paper, it is the shallowest, simplest, most brainless fighting game ever made. In practice, it is a fast-paced, combo-heavy, over-the-top pile of insanity. SNK decided to actually hold an official tournament for the game in Japan a couple days after launch to sort of promote it. And that tournament was utterly insane. Spoilers, Leona is top tier, followed by Sylvie Paula Paula, and then Mui Mui, and maybe Mian after that. But Leona is an early pick for best character in the game. People are doing some pretty ludicrous combos. You can look up the tournament on their YouTube channel. And can I just say that tournament was hilarious? Because on their official YouTube channel, they are airing this tournament. It's airing in Japan. It is completely in Japanese. but the chat is entirely in Spanish and Portuguese because Mexico and Brazil decided to tune in and made up the vast majority of the chat. There was only a few English speakers and barely any Japanese speakers. It's the kind of thing that makes me happy that KOF 14 put in a Mexican and Brazilian team. Because, yes, that's where KOF is very popular. KOF's interesting like that. But either way, they all tuned in, and it was the most insane tournament, and it reveals just how nuts the game is. Okay, it's incredibly simple to the point where there is no crouching. Why is there no crouching? Well, because then there's no mix-up. There's no high-low block. There's just blocking. And that immediately breaks people's brains, myself included. I can't stand games that don't let me crouch, but I've gotten used to it. But then, here's the even crazier thing. You have to hold a button to block. What? So, hardcore fighting gamers, they're like, I don't hold back, I have to hold a button? This feels so weird, this feels so wrong, until you start playing it a little more. In KOF, you can roll, and in this game, rolling is done by holding block and hitting a direction. And I remember, I was watching Maximilian try to play the game, and he's like, what the crap, this feels so awkward, this is so weird, I can't wrap my head around this, is so unintuitive. And it's like, dude, it's Smash. It literally works like Smash. In fact, it even has Smash air dodges. And when you think about it, though Smash lets you crouch, it doesn't have highs and lows. So that was their basis. They were like, okay, the entire guarding system is built on Smash, but here's where things start to go completely off the rails. It has air dashes. KOF never has air dashes. Shoot, SNK games don't have air dashes. It says air dashes. In fact, if you double tap up forward, you do an instant air dash, which is specifically recognized by the game because your trail is different. And you can cancel your air dashes with an air dodge at any time, and your runs with an air dodge, with a block, but you cannot cancel instant air dashes. And this is where things just get nuts, because there are more movement options in the game than there are attack options. You know what your attack options are? You can you can hit a weak attack 3 times to do a combo, or do a weak attack in midair. And then there is strong attack, air strong attack, and running strong attack. And that is it for your regular attacks. There is no forward and weak. There is no down and weak. There is no back and weak. There is no down and strong or forward and strong and back and strong. None of that is in there. You have, effectively speaking, 5 regular attacks, 2 throws, and usually about 4 specials. Meanwhile, but I'm not counting specials or throws, basically 5 regular attacks. Meanwhile, in terms of movement, you have walking, running, backdash, air dash, instant air dash, rolling, and air dodging. What? You have like 7 movement options and 5 regular attack options. What? And yet somehow the game winds up being really, really fun because of its combo mechanics, which I would describe as being like a combination of BlazBlue and Tekken, because everything is based off juggles and bounces. Because your forward strong attack causes a wall bounce. Your opponent bounces off the wall, and then you can combo them off the wall bounce. And there's a number of attacks that bounce the opponent off the ground, and you can combo off a ground bounce. So, and that's actually like really, I realize this is one of the goals of the game, is to make everything very visually clear, which they failed on the interface. But in terms of combat, it's really easy to tell when your opponent is blocking. You can tell if they're doing an air dash or an instant air dash based on the trail they're doing. And it is easy to tell when an opponent is comboable because they're floppy and bouncing all around. You're bouncing them off walls and off the ground, and that tells you, hey, you can combo off this. So, all of a sudden, you have these utterly insane combos. In the game, it's an air dasher. It's an anime fighter. It feels nothing like KOF. It feels like a combination of BlazBlue and Smash with a BlazBlue Tekken hybrid combo system. There's allowing some utterly insane combos, but then you get into just some of the weird mechanics, like the life bar utterly fries people's brains, especially myself included, because it starts looking like it's at half, even though it isn't, but it looks like it is. See, the way it works is every time you do a special attack, it actually drains a special meter. But your special meter and your life meter are the same meter. The less life you have, the more special you have. So the closer you are to losing, the more special attacks you can spam. And that applies to supers as well. Once that meter turns pink, that means you can do a super. Which reminds me, you want to talk about weird. The only way to knock out an opponent is to hit them with a super move. And if you're having flashbacks to PlayStation All-Stars, I can't blame you. But good news, it is not that bad. Not only because everyone has 2 super moves, but because once you get your opponent to 0 health, once they're at 0 HP, literally almost any attack will stun them. If you knock them down, they will be stunned. They get stunned really easy when they are at 0 HP. So that means all you gotta do is knock them down and then throw out a super, but that means you have to stop using your specials long enough to get a super. Also, the way you combo into supers is interesting because you cannot cancel your regular attacks into a super. Can't cancel your strong attacks into a super. Many supers can be comboed off a wall bounce, but the most effective way is to cancel your special attack into a super. But remember, number 1, you can only cancel special attack into a super if you're still on the ground. And number 2, remember that special attacks take meter. So, if you're not careful and you throw out a special attack, oh shoot, that drains your meter, you can't use your super. On top of all of this is the item system, which is like Mario Kart. Scattered around the stage are these yellow bubbles. When you hit them, it gives you an item. And then you hit the right analog stick to use it. Why? Well, there's a reason why. Because if you hit up, left, or right determines how the item comes in. Like, let's say you got a bomb. If you hit up, the bomb falls from the sky. If you hit left, it gets thrown in from the left side of the screen. If you hit right, it gets thrown in from the right side of the screen. And here's where things continue to get even more interesting. Because not only, like, this mechanic sounds terrible, but it is actually balanced around it. None of these items do that much damage. It's mostly just for causing chaos and breaking things up. And this is where things start getting really weird, because they also use it as a combo breaker mechanic. Realizing that their combos are going to be going on for way too long because they have such loose combo mechanics, they made it where every time you get slammed against the wall, there is an increasingly higher chance of them just throwing you a free item, so that way you can use it to break out of the combo. Which I know a lot of hardcore fighting gamers are going to hate, but I'm going to tell you, right now, you can turn off the items, but if you do, you are lame. Because the items make the game. The items make the game insane. Because you're in the middle of doing this super serious Blaze Blue air combo nonsense, and then all of a sudden a giant wrecking ball rolls across the stage, or you're being comboed and you're doing a big old combo, then you slip on a banana peel. It sounds so stupid, but it really does make the game work, and I am having way more fun with this game than I should, because again, the moveset is incredibly limited, yet I feel like I have so many more options than I do in Blade Strangers. I feel like there's stuff I could do. Like, the game is really easy to grasp to some degree once you get over the weirdness of how the meter works and how knocking opponents out works. By the way, the game can be played 2-on-2. Like, you can have it where another player controls the other character, and when they're in the background, that other player gets to control the items. So they actually have something to do. They have to sit there and time their item usages right to help out their teammate. Brilliant idea. Love it. But, big but, gotta preface this. Actually, a little late to preface this, but it needs to be said. The Nintendo Switch version is rough. While it is perfectly playable, it runs at sub 60. Some people are saying 45 FPS, and it's inconsistent, which just completely destroys the game. turns out the Switch version, even though that was the first version announced, even though that's the only version you can buy physically with ease, the only way to get a physical US PS4 version is to have pre-ordered the special edition off Nippon Ichi America's website. That was the only way to get it physically in English. Yeah, the Switch version is rough. The Switch version, again, it's playable, and perhaps a patch, there's supposed to be a patch this week, and perhaps that will fix the problems and make the game play well. Maybe. But the PS4 version, if it is at all possible, get the PS4 version. It looks slightly better, and it plays so much better because it is a solid, consistent 60 FPS. I went ahead and actually bought the game a second time because I wanted to play it on PS4, and I'm actually glad I did because the PS4 version just works better. It is buttery smooth, and it feels better, and it has better netcode. The netcode, I'm going to be honest, netcode in this game, little rough. Game runs slower. That's the way they do it. It runs slower to accommodate for the differences in internet speeds and so on. I have never played a match at full speed on either system, but due to the mechanics, it actually runs very well at a slow speed. But yeah, the netcode could use some work. I'm still playing it online, though, because I freaking love this game. It shouldn't be anywhere near as good as it is. On paper, it is garbage. In practice, it is brilliant. And that's what makes it truly strange. Also, kudos to the story mode. I like the story mode. It's a very arcade-style story mode, and it is getting an arcade release in Japan. But the way the story mode is set up is you choose your tag team, and every single possible pair of characters has their own intro. From there, after every match, there's a bunch of generic cutscenes explaining the plot, and you usually get these little cutaways to one of your characters just wondering aloud about various things. And now I'm getting a phone call, so I'm going to kick you back to the music. Here's I Am the Fire by Hailstorm, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music. That was Havana by Camila Cabello featuring Young Thug, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Sorry about the sudden break, but we needed to wrap things up anyway, and, I'm kind of waiting on a call for, a job offer, working on that thing. Like I said, I'm doing this show for free. I don't even get any Hot Pockets out of it. So, actually, you know what? That's not true. I mean, I don't get Hot Pockets, but I do get some high chews. So that's nice. Do it for the high chews. Anyway, so, yes, when there's a sudden phone call, it's like, I might have to drop everything. Of course, it winds up being Katie with the healthcare, blah, blah, blah. Of course. Anyway, so, if you're tuning into the show late and wondering what I've been talking about, don't worry, because either today or tomorrow, I will have today's show up on the GameBabble Live Archive on YouTube. Just search up GameBabble Live Archive, and you should slam face first into one of over 60 episodes of me rambling about games for an hour and a half. Hopefully you will enjoy them, and I will do my best to keep the latest episodes flowing as fast as I can. Excuse me. Anyway, you got the general gist of what I was talking about before the break, where I was saying, you know what, SNK Heroine's Tag Team Frenzy is a way better game than it has any right to be, because on paper it sounds terrible, and in practice it's actually kind of amazing, as long as you have an open mind about it. Don't expect, it's not KOF, don't expect it to be KOF. Know that the game that you're playing is a little bit weird, that it is designed to be a simplified fighting game, so yes, it plays like a simplified fighting game, but it has more meat on its bones than you might think. It is actually really fun. Fair warning, netcode is not so hot. Switch version is especially bad, not just in terms of netcode, but it's a poor port, but still, I'm having a lot of fun with the game. I love it. You could say I'm addicted to SNK heroines. Want it injected straight into my veins. Anyway, moving right along. The other thing I did is I recently got a bit of extra cash, and so I was able to finally satiate my curiosity surrounding Go Vacation on Switch. I know this is such a pointless thing to talk about, but I really want to talk about it. See, Go Vacation was the third entry in the Wii Ski series back on the Nintendo Wii, and it was this 4-player simultaneous split-screen free-roaming open-world minigame collection created by a crew of over 200 developers, or not developers, but 200 people, many of which were the Ridge Racer crew, and it was the Wiiest Wii game that ever Wii'd. And out of nowhere, Namco Bandai said, hey, we're going to take that, we're going to port it to Switch, we're going to give it enhanced graphics and new features. They're like, what? And they're like, yeah, it comes out in a month, see ya. It's like, uh-huh. And unfortunately, I just did not have the cash to spare to pick it up. Finally did, because I wanted to know what they did. And I can safely say the graphics are definitely improved. Character customization is still unfortunately limited. Weirdly, the characters you have a choice of are the characters you can choose from in the game are slightly different from the ones on the Wii release, so that's a little weird. But in terms of how it plays, it does still support motion control, but nearly every game can be played with a Pro controller, with regular, normal controls, which very much changes the game. But it does mean that the control layout is a little weird. Like, you use the Y button to accelerate, and R2 to jump. It's like, what? And sometimes things still have shakes to them. Like, doing random tricks still requires shaking your controller. So that's slightly annoying. But yeah, that's there. There's a lot more characters running around. Visuals are definitely improved. They've added in animals roaming around the island that you can take photos of, and there's a photo book for that. But on the flip side, it looks like some games have been expanded, but other games have been removed entirely. Much to my disappointment, dancing is gone. That was my number one question. What's the deal with dancing? Is dancing there? Nope, dancing is out. Very much makes me sad, because dancing played like Wii Cheer, and it was actually really good. And it's gone. So is the sword fighting. I am very disappointed by this fact. But on the flip side, the racing is better than ever. Which is, of course, it makes sense because the racing is literally Ridge Racer. The second course in the racing minigame is like a remake of the old Ridge Racer 1 course. And it doesn't have Ridge Racer drifting. It's more Mario Kart style drifting, but it has the later Ridge Racer boost system, and all of the stages play a tropical remix of the Ridge Racer theme. It's Ridge Racer. What? Huh? And before it was Ridge Racer, but you're tilting your Wiimote to steer. Well, now I get to play it with a regular controller. Yeah, it feels surprisingly solid. Shame you have to unlock the city resort to play it, but yeah, no, that racing's good. I'm definitely gonna take more time to explore Go Vacation, because it's such a fascinating and weird thing. Because, it is the casualest of casual games. It is the Wiiest Wii game ever made, now available on Switch. And again, they enhanced the graphics? Okay. I wonder if it runs better in split screen now. I'm very curious about this, but it's made by Namco. If there's one thing Namco does, it's reference Namco. All the time. And that's still in there. Yo, you're playing beach volleyball, and there's advertisements for Zol gear. Some of the fictional companies from Ridge Racer are represented in there. And then, of course, on your vehicles, you've got a picture of the ship from Xevious known as the Solvalu, and it says Solvalu across the back of your car. And, typical Namco-isms. You're skating around the city, and then, here's a giant animated billboard of Mappy and Pac-Man, and there's a giant skyscraper with a big pixelated Pac-Man cherry on it. Because Namco loves to reference, not to mention the music. Cripes, they're playing an English version of the Moji Pitan song and some vocal Pac-Man tunes from, Pac-Mania. Just, it is, I would not recommend the game, especially not at the price they're asking. But it is so fascinating and weird to explore that I can't help but have a little bit of a soft spot for it. So, is there anything else worth mentioning? We've talked about how DOA 6 is simultaneously shaping up and making me go... We've talked about how the new Spider-Man making a lot of people happy. Why The Last Remnant was pulled from storefronts because they're re-releasing it as a remaster. Oh, Dissidia Final Fantasy NT is adding... Oh, how do you pronounce that? Camlanot? From Final Fantasy XI as a DLC character. So there's that. Talked about Omega Labyrinth getting a new entry on the Switch. Balls in Your Court. Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition coming out soon. And yeah. Space Harrier remake. Looks like we are about good. Oh, by the way, there is going to be a Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee Special Edition Nintendo Switch bundles. Is there any picture? I'm seeing the Pikachu one. Okay, the pose Pikachu is in there is kind of amusing. Okay, so it has Pikachu and Eevee on the charger, and then one Joy-Con is Eevee brown and the other is Pikachu yellow. Okay, yeah, and that's going to be a bundle with the games because they're expecting those to sell. Oh, God, what am I looking at there? So yeah, hope you've enjoyed today's episode of GameBabble Live. If I were to pick the game I am most excited for, I don't know. I was gonna say Space Channel 5 VR, but that Crystal Chronicles remake makes me really happy. Either way, it's been a good show. I hope y'all enjoyed. I'll try to get this up on the GameBabble Live archive within a day or two as I end the show and immediately take it over to the computer lab to clean it and edit it and make it all happen. Actually, I forgot to double check and make sure that it's recording. Should be. Before I make a fool of myself. No, it's recording. We good. So I'll take this to the computer lab, clean it up, get it onto YouTube as soon as possible. And if you'd like to catch up on previous episodes of GameBabble Live, just be sure to type in GameBabble Live Archive into YouTube. You'll slam face first into some. Anyway, thanks again for listening. I think it's time to wrap up the show, so please enjoy How Long by Charlie Puth here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in again next week from noon to 3 p.m. for more GameBabble Live. See you then.